The contact between Wikileaks and Donald Trump Jr., reportedly shared with another 5 top campaign advisors, directly contradict what Vice President Pence claimed in October 14th, actually, 2016.
Some have suggested on the left that all this bad stuff about Hillary, nothing bad about Trump, that your campaign is in cahoots with WikiLeaks.
Nothing could be further from the truth. I think all of us have, have had concerns about WikiLeaks over the years.
After the Atlantic's report, the vice president's office put out a statement. The vice president was never aware of anyone associated with the campaign being in contact with WikiLeaks.
They have left him, seriously,
he first
in a
learned of this
hermetically
news
sealed bubble
from a published report earlier tonight.
He knows
it's
nothing.
nearly the same response Pence used when another campaign official's undisclosed links became public in March.
The story today that former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn has filed with the Department of Justice as a foreign agent.
Well, let me say, hearing that story today was the first I heard of it.
You're disappointed by the story?
The first I heard of it.
I mean, what are you doing there? Do you know anything? The latest disclosure is just the latest time. Pence has found his words contradicted by the truth. Actions.
They don't tell him anything. What's with that?
By the transition and the administration. Take a look.
I'd be disappointed.
General Flynn's son has no involvement in the transition whatsoever.
He has a transition email.
Well, he has no involvement in the transition whatsoever.
Was there any contact in any way between Trump or his associates and the Kremlin or cutouts they had?
I joined this campaign in the summer, and I can tell you that all the contact by the Trump campaign and associates was with the American people.
But did the president fire Director Comey to impede the Russia investigation?
Well, as you know very clearly, as has been stated repeatedly and the president has been told, he's not under investigation.
But intelligence officials have said there's investigation into potential ties between campaign officials and Russian officials.
That's not what this was about.
So literally every time he's interviewed on anything of substance and concern, he knows absolutely nothing. And it turns out that he says he knows absolutely nothing, but he doesn't know what's going on. So either he's clueless and he joined this administration and literally put in earplugs and put on blinders and is walking around completely incapable of hearing anything. Is that possible?
It is possible that they leave him out of the room when they're having the discussions.
Well, then why interview him? Like, he has absolutely no credibility.
I will say he has been remarkably wrong a remarkable number of times about very, very important things.
He knows nothing.
And the last thing he said about Russia, about nobody talked to Russians. Well, everybody around him. I mean, seriously, when they were wearing the Russian fur hats in July and speaking Russian,
he should have picked up on.
Should have picked up on it. Yeah. But he just thought that was like northern Wisconsin.
It could well be that Vice President Pence is smart enough to leave the room.
Well, he could have been doing what Dina Powell and Gary Cohn reportedly have been doing lately. Is you speak Russia. You talk about Russia, we're out of the room. So, no, I mean, maybe he's smart enough to have always been in a position where there is plausible deniability. That said,
Mika's not buying your argument, Congressman.
This is the way things go there?
I'm doing the best I can.
Yeah,
here.
I don't know. It's like Kellyanne is uncredible because she blatantly lies. Somebody who's clueless is not credible either.
I'm getting out of here.
Listen, I mean, actually, seriously, though, if you have been lied to that many times, there's only one thing to do. I mean, you lied to me one time and I'm working for you.
I'm out of here.
The alternative explanation, though, Kristen Soltis Anderson, is that he does know what's going on and he sees how bad it is and he wants nothing to do with it. He doesn't want to go down for Donald Trump Jr.'s contacts with WikiLeaks. He doesn't want to go down for General Michael Flynn, and he's sort of carving out his own universe where he can have some deniability whether or not that's true.
I think what you're seeing Mike Pence do is prepare for a future universe where Donald Trump he's either lost re-election or he's coming to the end of an 8-year presidency, and Mike Pence would like to run for president himself. And in order to do so, he will have to have been loyal enough to the president so that Trump supporters within the party view Pence as a natural heir to the Trump throne, while still distancing himself enough from the most unsavory pieces of this administration. But I think it's a really tough tough line to walk. I think the level of loyalty that this president demands is not going to be thrilled with the level of distancing, and I don't know what this is. I had nothing to do with it, especially if it comes to distancing yourself from the president's children.
So his loyalty that he is showing, or cluelessness, is totally trumping over whatever love of country he has. So that's not going to help him in a campaign.
Well, I mean, you know.
Oh, yes.
A lot of people walk out of the room and want plausible deniability. I'm not saying that's the case, but maybe
the
that's what he's doing.
Vice President has no clue about any of this.
I don't know. Anybody think anybody think he has no clue about this?
No, I don't.
And if he's choosing to have no clue,
for 2 years now, to sit at the side of Donald Trump and have no clue that there was no contact, to say there was no contact at a minimum with Russia, that's impossible.
If he's choosing to have no clue, he does not care about this country and its future.
Well, if you believe some strong rumors in the District of Columbia, you'd have to believe that Mike Pence does know a lot about what's going on and is smart enough to leave the room. So he does have plausible deniability, because he and more than a few of his people are always preparing right now for a Pence presidency, right now.
Well, and Mike Pence also is, Kristen, Mike Pence is extremely popular with the Republican base now. Is he not? Even never-Trumpers. Wow. From never-Trumpers to people who are all in for Trump, Mike Pence is a very popular figure within the party.
For sure. When he was chosen to be the running mate, it was viewed as this olive branch to ideological conservatives who had big reservations about Donald Trump as the nominee. And in some ways, he represents the Trump agenda, but with a softer delivery. So if you're the type of Republican who likes what Trump's about, but maybe wishes he would lay off the Twitter, or maybe wishes that he would stop being so, so brash and abrasive, that's Mike Pence for you, the sort of mild-mannered guy on top of the Make America Great Again agenda. But, to the extent that he remains popular in the party, that is very linked to Donald Trump remaining popular in the party, which I've long maintained. I don't see this Russia story being the thing that does him in, but Pence is smart enough to know to try to keep his distance as much as possible in case this goes really south.
And it's been fascinating watching him overseas. He speaks of Russia not the way Donald Trump speaks of Russia, the way Ronald Reagan or your father would speak of Russia, and that is a very hard line. It's very interesting. There is this disconnect. Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.